It was the kind of day that Washington insiders call picture-perfect politics. A grand ballroom within the Capitol Hilton had been transformed into the central stage for the annual Democratic Leadership Conference, a marquee event where speeches echo louder than promises and appearances carry more weight than policy. Everything down to the tablecloths had been curated to send one single message: we are united. Rows of flags lined the perimeter of the room, fluttering gently in the air-conditioned breeze. The stage was dressed in deep blues and silvers, evoking calm tradition power. Volunteers wore matching badges. Cameramen adjusted tripods with military precision. And at the heart of the room sat over 2,000 people, lawmakers, donors, strategists, and the press, all dressed in sharp suits and guarded smiles. This wasn't just a political event. It was a broadcasted statement to the world. The Democratic Party, despite its inner debates and generational rifts, still walked in lockstep. Or at least that was the plan. For weeks, leadership had worked behind the scenes to downplay tensions, particularly between the party's older establishment and its growing younger faction. The seating arrangements were symbolic, placing rising stars like Representative Jasmine Crockett directly opposite powerhouses like Vice President Kamala Harris. To the casual viewer, it looked like a celebration of diversity, progress, inclusion. But to those who understood the subtext, it was more like an arranged marriage between legacy and rebellion, and no one quite knew whether the vows would hold or snap under pressure. What no one, not even the most seasoned political observer, realized was that this carefully choreographed stage would soon become a battlefield, not of fists or laws, but of pride, power, and public perception. And it wouldn't take long. In a matter of minutes, the smiles would fade, the rehearsed speeches would be drowned out by raw emotion, and the world would watch as a vice president cracked and a freshman representative rose, not just in stature, but in purpose. No one had come expecting history, but history had arrived anyway, wearing heels, holding microphones, and staring directly across the aisle. Kamala Harris stepped onto the stage with a smile, the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. It was polished, practiced, professional, but behind it a storm of pressure, resentment, and fear. She adjusted her blazer, nodded graciously to the audience, and moved like a woman in control. But her eyes betrayed her. They scanned the crowd not for comfort, but for threats, for dissent, for her. Jasmine Crockett, the freshman congresswoman from Texas, entered the room without a word, but with a presence that couldn't be ignored. She didn't flash a grin. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Dressed in a sharp black suit, her expression was calm, not cold, but composed, like someone who had already predicted everything that was about to unfold. Her eyes met Kamala's, only for a second. But in that second, the energy in the room shifted. To the audience, it may have seemed like two powerful women sharing the stage, but anyone watching closely could feel it. This wasn't cooperation. This was confrontation waiting to erupt. And while Kamala's smile grew tighter with each camera flash, Jasmine's calm became sharper, like the stillness before lightning strikes. They hadn't said a word to each other, but the war had already begun. In the back rows where aides, staffers, and press members often sit elbow to elbow, the whispers had already begun. Kamala's been tense for weeks. She didn't want to be on the same stage as Crockett. Something's going to happen. You can feel it. These weren't just office rumors. They were warnings in disguise. Journalists who had covered 1,000 events suddenly had their pens poised not just for note-taking, but for history-making. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in closer, as if their lenses could catch the tension in the air. The temperature in the room hadn't changed, but the atmosphere heavy, dense, ready to combust. Even seasoned political analysts were shifting in their seats. There was a tremor in the energy, like the quiet seconds before a thunderstorm cracks the sky open. Kamala was smiling, but staffers noticed the tremble in her hand when she took a sip of water. Jasmine was silent, but her silence felt louder than any speech. In the press, they didn't know what was coming, but they knew enough to keep their cameras rolling nonstop. On paper, they were allies. Same party, same platform, same stage. But in reality, they came from two different worlds. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, carried the weight of decades in public service. A former prosecutor, a senator, a trailblazer. She was the first Black and South Asian woman to reach the second highest office in the land. To millions, she represented power, progress, and the long arc of justice bending forward. But power once held too long doesn't always soften with age. Sometimes it hardens, Behind the polished speeches and sharp suits was a woman under fire. Her approval numbers were plummeting, her influence in the party shrinking. And worst of all, younger, bolder voices were beginning to rise, voices like Jasmine Crockett's. Crockett, a freshman representative from Texas, was everything the establishment wasn't prepared for. Young, fierce, outspoken, unapologetic. She didn't play the game, she questioned it. She didn't wait her turn as she created space. And unlike so many new lawmakers, she didn't just ride emotion. She brought data, policy, purpose. To the voters, she was refreshing. To the system, she was disruptive. Two women, one trying to hold on to legacy, the other trying to redefine the future. The stage wasn't just a stage anymore. It was a collision course between two generations of American politics, and only one would walk off stronger. Long before the cameras rolled, before microphones were clipped and speeches rehearsed, the real battle had already begun behind closed doors. In private strategy meetings, Kamala Harris, who once prided herself on mentorship, had begun referring to Jasmine Crockett in ways that raised eyebrows. She's not ready. She's too loud, too emotional. This isn't a courtroom TikTok, it's real politics. The comments weren't meant for public ears, but Washington whispers travel fast, especially when they come from someone as high up as the vice president. What stung more than the words themselves was the condescension wrapped in them. Kamala wasn't critiquing policy, she was dismissing the woman behind it. But Jasmine, she didn't take the bait. She didn't respond in the press. She didn't post a fiery tweet. She didn't leak quotes to stir outrage. Instead, she worked. She studied. She listened. She showed up to every hearing prepared with data, with arguments, with strategy. And slowly, without ever clapping back, she started earning the respect of both colleagues and critics. What Kamala saw as ambition, others began to recognize as authentic leadership. And while the vice president doubled down on maintaining her status, Jasmine quietly built something even more dangerous in Washington trust. To the cameras, it looked like unity. Two powerful women. One stage, smiles, nods, applause. The kind of imagery campaigns dream about. A visual billboard that screamed, "The Democratic Party is strong, diverse, and united." But behind those curated optics lurked a war. Not a war of guns or protests, but of ego, relevance, and generational survival. Kamala, standing tall beside Jasmine, was smiling for the press, but her fists were clenched behind the podium. Every camera flash was a trigger. Every compliment Jasmine received felt like a threat, not a celebration. In contrast, Jasmine didn't flinch. She smiled too, not out of politeness, but out of knowing. Knowing that what Kamala feared wasn't Crockett's policies. It was her presence, her ability to connect without trying, her rise without permission. What the public saw as harmony was actually a balancing act over a political minefield. And the closer Jasmine came to center stage, the more Kamala's grip on control began to slip. The moment Kamala Harris stepped up to the mic, the room shifted. The applause was polite, automatic, not enthusiastic. She gave a tight smile, scanned the crowd, and began speaking. But something was off. Her voice, usually steady and smooth, had a sharp edge today. Each word sliced the air like it had a point to prove. Gone was the practiced charm, the graceful cadence. In its place was something colder, harder, sharper. Her eyes no longer danced. They locked, scanning the crowd like a hunter waiting for movement. Her tone wasn't inspirational. It was surgical, precise, almost cutting. Some people in this room, she said, pausing deliberately, seem to believe that winning one election makes them the voice of the party. The room tensed. No names were spoken, but everyone knew who she meant. Jasmine didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even shift in her seat. But for those watching closely, it was obvious Kamala wasn't speaking as a vice president anymore. She was speaking as a woman cornered by fear, by pride, by time. The polished mask was cracking, and through those cracks, something raw was beginning to leak through. Her words were wrapped in diplomacy, but sharpened like knives. Some people, Harris said, eyes scanning the crowd, seemed to believe that just winning an election qualifies them to lead. The crowd didn't applaud. They didn't cheer. They just froze collectively, holding their breath. Because they all knew she wasn't speaking in theory. She was speaking to one person with one purpose. Her tone carried the weight of frustration that had been building behind the scenes for months. This wasn't policy critique. This was personal. Each syllable landed with a thud, cutting, not clarifying. The way she emphasized just winning made it clear she didn't see Jasmine Crockett as a peer. She saw her as an intruder, bold, young, uninvited. What should have been a speech about party unity had turned into a public scolding. And while Kamala never raised her voice, her words did the damage. They sliced through the air with surgical cruelty, like she was performing an emotional assassination in real time. The room had stopped breathing. Not literally, but it felt that way. After Kamala's final jab, a sharp silence sliced through the air, more deafening than any outburst could have been. No shifting, no whispers, just eyes, all of them turning toward one person. The cameras knew where to go. They slowly panned to Jasmine Crockett sitting in the front row, still, unmoving, unshaken. She didn't adjust her jacket. She didn't blink rapidly like someone stung. She didn't fumble with a paper or glance around for support. She just looked straight ahead, her eyes locked on Kamala, not with anger, not even defiance, but with a calm so unnerving it made people in the audience sit straighter. It wasn't the calm of fear. It was the calm of someone who knows exactly who she is and knows exactly what's coming next. For a full 5 seconds, 5 full heavy seconds, the auditorium said nothing, and in that silence, history held its breath. It happened in a flash, a moment that would be replayed, memed, dissected for months to come. Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, snapped. "Who do you think you are?" she suddenly shouted, "standing here and daring to criticize me?" Her voice cracked mid-sentence. The microphone hissed with the sudden spike in volume. Her hand, trembling, pointed directly at Jasmine Crockett, and her eyes red, wet, furious. The silence of moments before shattered like glass under a hammer. Gasps rippled through the room. Phones went up, cameras zoomed in. Even the moderators froze in place. This wasn't politics anymore. This was personal, ugly, raw, unfiltered. The vice president had lost her grip not just on the room but on herself. She wasn't defending policy. She wasn't asserting leadership. She was lashing out. And that, more than anything, was what made the moment so unforgettable. Because in that one outburst, Kamala didn't just attack Crockett. She exposed herself. She didn't flinch. She didn't wince. She didn't even look surprised. As Kamala's final scream echoed into silence, Jasmine Crockett slowly stood up. No dramatic pause, no angry expression, no fire in her face, just something far more dangerous: stillness. The room, already breathless now, felt like a vacuum. Every movement Jasmine made seemed amplified. The way she adjusted her suit jacket, the quiet confidence in her stride, the rhythm of her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Cameras turned and locked onto her like magnets. Boom mics lowered. The entire nation, watching through screens, leaned in. She walked with purpose, not rushing, not dragging, just steady, like she knew the moment wasn't controlling her. She was controlling the moment. Kamala's eyes followed her every step, her jaw clenched, but Jasmine never looked away. She reached the mic, adjusted it ever so slightly, paused. And in that pause, she took back the room. The room was already hers, but she hadn't said a word until now. Jasmine leaned ever so slightly toward the mic, not to project volume, but to deliver truth. And then, without raising her voice, without trembling, without blinking, she spoke. "Madam Vice President, nobody works for you. We work for the American people." That was it. No more, no less. But in that sentence, everything shifted. There was no applause. Not yet. There was only silence, the kind of silence that comes when something sacred just got said aloud. Because this wasn't a comeback. This was a correction, a reset of the balance, a reminder that titles don't make leaders. Integrity does. Kamala stood frozen, jaw tight, hands clenched, eyes wide. In America, watching from homes, phones, offices, buses, felt something click. Jasmine hadn't just responded. She'd redefined the conversation. Less than 1 hour after Crockett's calm thunder echoed across the Capitol, the internet exploded. The 12-second clip of Jasmine's mic drop moment was clipped, captioned, shared, looped, remixed, reaction videoed. Over 2 million views in the first 45 minutes. By sundown, it had passed 12 million and counting. On Twitter, the hashtag Crockett Clapback skyrocketed to the one trending topic in the country. People weren't just watching, they were cheering, crying, retweeting with fire emojis. TikTokers stitched it with clips of activists, civil rights legends, and Gen Z creators yelling "preach." YouTubers rushed to upload reaction videos titled "The Moment Kamala Knew She Lost." This one sentence changed the election. Jasmine Crockett just shook the White House in the comment sections. I felt that in my soul. She said what we've all been thinking. New favorite politician? Hands down. We don't work for you, iconic. Across the digital sphere, it wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. She's the future. Finally, someone said it. This is the leadership we've been waiting for. Across the country from Detroit to Dallas, Americans flooded social media morning shows and opinion columns to praise Jasmine Crockett as the new voice of truth in Washington. Veterans, teachers, nurses, and even disillusioned Republicans shared the same message. I may not agree with her politics, but I respect the hell out of her courage. Late-night hosts replayed the moment with standing ovation-style monologues. Cable news anchors called it the mic drop that might reshape 2028. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris faced a tidal wave of backlash. Clips of her outburst eyes, blazing finger-jabbing, circulated with headlines like "unfit and unhinged when power feels threatened." Kamala's meltdown, a warning sign. Editorials questioned her emotional control. Even Democratic allies went quiet or worse distanced themselves. On Capitol Hill, whispers turned into statements. That's not who we are. We need composure, not chaos. Crockett showed grace, Harris showed weakness. By the end of the day, a Gallup instant poll revealed 67% of Americans sided with Crockett. Only 18% defended Harris. In one night, the roles had reversed. Jasmine Crockett was the leader. Kamala Harris was the cautionary tale. The internet didn't just watch, it went wild. Meme pages exploded. Reddit threads hit 10K plus comments. Instagram reels were edited with slow-motion zoom-ins on Kamala's trembling finger. TikToks added dramatic violin music every time Crockett turned her head. Twitter X went scorched earth. Kamala screams. America cringes. Ice Queen. Jasmine just froze the White House VP or VP out within hours. Hashtags flooded the feeds. Kamala meltdown. Crockett is queen. Self-destruct. Live users weren't just mocking that, they were analyzing, reacting, and recreating. Comedians did sketches reenacting Kamala's eruption, while Crockett's calm stare became a viral GIF captioned, "When you've already won and they don't know it yet." CNN aired a full panel, "The Anatomy of a Political Self-Destruction." Meanwhile, conservative pundits gleefully weaponized the footage. Even neutral media couldn't avoid the word unraveling. Collapse. The moment the dam broke. What started in a single room had now set fire to every screen in the country. At 7:42 a.m., her phone lit up. Not a message of support, not a crisis team update, but a single line from her campaign treasurer: "We just lost 3 of our top donors." Kamala Harris, once the golden candidate with an open checkbook from Silicon Valley and East Coast elite, was suddenly toxic. The Greenpoint Foundation gone. The Unity Fund paused until further notice. A high-profile entertainment mogul no longer comfortable being associated. In just 12 hours, millions evaporated. But that wasn't the worst part. A leaked memo from the Senate Finance Oversight Committee made the rounds internally. Given recent emotional volatility, recommend psychological assessment before further committee leadership roles are considered. Psychological assessment. The Vice President of the United States. That phrase alone sent shockwaves through Washington's power corridors. Whispers turned to rumors and rumors into headlines. Is Kamala Harris losing her grip? 3 donors out, stability in question. Leadership in crisis, Democratic Party at a crossroads. By noon, pundits weren't asking if Kamala would recover. They were asking if she would finish the term. Her silence made it worse. Her office gave no statement, and the absence of clarity became the loudest answer of all. In just 48 hours, Jasmine Crockett's follower count jumped by over 200,000. Her inbox flooded, her team overwhelmed, her calendar full for the next 3 weeks. She wasn't trending anymore. She was leading. Invitations from across the country came pouring in. "Can you keynote our Civil Justice Forum in Atlanta? Would be honored to have you speak at the Women of Power Summit. Would you consider addressing youth leaders at UCLA?" Her team scrambled to triage, not because of lack of interest, but because every major progressive organization now wanted her name at the top of their program. Her tone in interviews measured, humble, strong. It was never about disrespecting the vice president, she told MSNBC. It was about respecting the American people. That quote alone went viral. Suddenly, political analysts were asking, could Jasmine Crockett be the new face of the Democratic Party? Is this the generational shift we've been waiting for? The base was energized. Grassroots donations surged. College students changed their profile pics to her viral stare down. And as one tweet perfectly put it, Crockett didn't just survive the fire. She became the flame. It wasn't official, but everyone felt it. The Democratic Party, once branded as unified under progress and inclusivity, was cracking at its seams. On one side, the establishment, longtime senators, legacy donors, and older voters circled the wagons around Kamala Harris. They called for respect for hierarchy. They dismissed the moment as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by social media. "We don't tear down our own," one veteran congressman said. "This is about decorum, not drama." But younger progressives weren't buying it. They saw something else. They saw a generational voice finally rise up and speak what many were too afraid to say. Campus organizations issued statements of solidarity. Progressive PACs shifted funding priorities. Youth-run accounts flooded platforms with bold statements like, "Crockett didn't attack the party, she saved its soul." Behind closed doors, DNC strategists were divided. One group argued, "We must protect the brand. We can't let this fracture the party in an election year." The other whispered, "This isn't a fracture, this is the future, and it's already arrived." Polls began showing it too. Among voters under 40, Jasmine Crockett's approval soared by 37 points in just 5 days. Among Black female voters, a historic Democratic stronghold, her name recognition had nearly doubled. A quiet civil war was brewing. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone knew this wasn't just about two women. This was about who gets to define the next generation of American leadership. "I have no regrets." That's what Kamala Harris said during a brief, tense interview on PBS NewsHour. Just 7 words, firm, clipped, rehearsed. But her face told a completely different story. Her eyes, once commanding, now darted nervously between cameras. The smile she forced cracked at the edges. The silence between her sentences stretched longer than they should have. The host pressed gently, "Do you think your reaction may have hurt your credibility with younger voters?" Kamala didn't flinch, but she didn't answer either. Instead, she nodded slowly, looked down for a split second, and pivoted. Leadership is about holding the line, and sometimes that line gets messy. What line, who drew it, and who just crossed it? Viewers across America stared at their screens, some with sympathy, others with bitter disappointment. The vice president, who once symbolized hope, change, and a historic milestone for women and minorities, now looked tired. Not physically, but politically, like a legacy slipping through her fingers. Twitter was unkind. No regrets started trending, but not in support. Memes poured in, some cruel, some funny, most laced with one central theme: she said she has no regrets. But her face said everything. She didn't hold a rally. There were no fireworks, no stage lights, no cheering crowds. Instead, Jasmine Crockett stood in front of a modest podium at a local community center in Dallas, surrounded not by billionaires or senators, but by nurses, teachers, single moms, and college students. She wasn't there to defend herself. She didn't need to. Leadership, she said calmly, isn't about titles. It's about how you confront injustice when the cameras are off, when the pressure's high, when you're all alone. There was no venom in her tone. No direct mention of Kamala Harris, just conviction. Quiet, steady, undeniable. She spoke of public service, not politics, of serving, not surviving, of courage, the kind that doesn't trend but transforms. The crowd didn't erupt. They leaned in. You could hear sniffles. A grandmother in the second row wiped away tears. A young Black girl clutched her future voter sticker like it was gold. "I don't want power," Crockett said. "I want justice. I don't want control. I want clarity." And with those words, she didn't just shift the narrative. She shifted the definition of leadership for a new generation. The emails poured in. The voicemails never stopped. Letters written in careful, shaky handwriting arrived at Crockett's office by the hundreds. From a retired factory worker in Ohio, "You spoke the words we've been carrying in silence for years." From a teacher in Georgia, finally someone who isn't afraid to tell the truth even when it hurts. From a single mother in California, "My daughter watched you that night. She said, 'Mama, I want to be like her.' Thank you for giving her hope." This wasn't just politics anymore. This was resonance. This was a moral echo, louder than any campaign ad, deeper than any soundbite. The clash between Harris and Crockett faded into something greater, a collective awakening. It wasn't about who won the argument. It was about a nation realizing it had been waiting for leaders who didn't hide behind status or fear, waiting for courage spoken plainly. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just defended herself. She had cracked open a truth that millions had buried in their chests. And when she said, "We work for the American people," it didn't stay on that stage. It became a chant at rallies, a headline in op-eds, a whisper in families sitting at kitchen tables asking, if leadership isn't about titles, then who really deserves to lead us? And that question echoing across living rooms, workplaces, and classrooms was the kind of question no politician could control. It was bigger than Kamala, bigger than Crockett. It was about America itself. This story isn't just about politics. It's about courage, truth, and integrity. In life, there will always be people who try to silence you, belittle you, or use power to intimidate you. But true leadership is not about titles, money, or status. It's about standing up even when your voice shakes and speaking for what's right. When Jasmine Crockett said, "We work for the American people," she reminded us of something universal. We are not defined by the positions we hold, but by the values we live by. So in your own life, whether at work, in your family, or in your community, never be afraid to rise, speak your truth, and defend justice. Sometimes one calm sentence can change everything. If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage, justice, and the kind of leadership we truly need, don't just watch and leave. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and join our growing community of people who believe in truth, fairness, and stories that matter. Together we can make sure voices like Jasmine's are never silenced.